I'd like to talk about the real numbers. The real numbers are basically anything that we have in our world, and we're going to break these down into subgroups or subsets. So here's a nice little image. When we first learn to count, we start with the natural numbers. That's why they're called natural. It's what we naturally learn as humans. We teach babies to count starting with 1, not with 0. So the natural numbers start with the number 1 and continue to infinity. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. Then we have the whole numbers. The whole numbers are all the natural numbers. So 4 is both whole and natural, plus the number 0. 0 is a pretty special number. We didn't have 0 in a number system for quite a while. It came along well after we were doing mathematics and building things. It was a new system for us. Then we have the integers. The integers include all the negative natural numbers. So we have 4 is both natural, whole, and an integer. But negative 4 is only an integer. After the integers, we have the rational numbers. If you look up underlined ratio, that means fraction. A ratio is a fraction. So these are anything that could be written as a fraction. So that could be negative, positive. So 3 can be written as a fraction. It could be written as 3 over 1 or 6 over 2. So it is also a rational number. They don't have to look like fractions. I could have a 0.5, and that's also rational because it is 1/2. So natural, whole, integer, rational, they're all together. They're cascading together. Off by itself are our irrational guys. These are the crazy ones. You can't be both rational and irrational. You got to be one or the other. So over here we have pi, we have our square roots, and some crazy looking decimals. And we'll talk a little bit about more about those in the next video. Both rational and irrational numbers are going to come together to form our real numbers. Every real number is either rational or irrational. There are no numbers over here. You have to be one of these two. So our first example, we're going to give any 3 numbers that you want between -6 and 6 that satisfy each one of these conditions. So the first one, real numbers but not positive numbers. So basically anything that's not positive. So some possible examples, -3 is negative, it's a real number. You can have a fraction that's negative. And 0 is also not negative. It's not positive either. It's neither one. Some rational numbers that are not integers. Well, integers are nice pretty numbers like -3, 5, 0, 10, no decimals. So basically anything with a decimal. Things that can be written as a fraction like 1/2. Or anything that has any numbers in the tenths, hundredths, any decimal place. Some true or false questions. Every whole number is positive. Well, that's false. We just talked about in the last slide that 0 is not positive, but it is a whole number. Every rational number is a real number. Well, that's true because everything's a real number. A number can be irrational and rational. False. You can never be both. You have to be one or the other. A number can be natural and an integer. True. An example of this would be 5 is natural and an integer, or 1. Last, I'll give us a set of numbers and we're going to list out which ones belong to each set. So first, the natural numbers. So from this given list, the natural numbers are 1 and the square root of 9. Now you might say, well, the square root of 9 is the square root, so it must be irrational. But remember, we know what the square root of 9 is. That's 3, so we can reduce that down. The square root of 2 I cannot reduce down. The whole numbers in the given list are 0, 1, and the square root of 9. Once you're a natural number, you're going to be included in all the list up to rational. The integers are going to include all the whole numbers, as well as any of the negatives without decimals. So -10, 0, 1, and the square root of 9. My rational numbers are going to be anything basically that's not irrational. So all the integers plus fractions and decimals. So negative 10, negative 2.7, negative 1/4, 0, 1, square root of 9, and 5.7. Basically all of them except for the irrational number, the square root of 2. So the only irrational number then is the square root of 2. Together, rational and irrational should make up your entire set of numbers. So if you're asked what all the real numbers are, it is the complete set that was listed. Everything we're going to be looking at is a real number. So there we have our complete set.